act upon it. Also want to take a look at methods. Do the researchers take time to spend do they spend time discussing how they conducted their project? Did they conduct interviews? Did they explain why they used those kinds of methods? Did the researchers explain or discuss any potential ethical issues in conducting their study? Did they conduct research with people that were underneath the age of 18? I mean, there are ethical issues involved with that. There are also ethical issues like if they had to deceive people in their study, like they had to tell research participants that the study was about one issue when it was really about another issue. That's deception, and sometimes that's needed in order to get people to be truthful and honest in their responses. So there's a number of different ways that people collect data, the researchers collect data. What were the different methods that were used in your project? I could see that being an important part of your essay for the discourse analysis, understanding what are the different methods that researchers in your discipline use. I think that could be pretty helpful for you to understand what writing would look like in your discipline. The use of data, another important issue to think about. What kinds of data or results were generated by the project? Again, looking at lab results, did they look at records? Did they have a survey project where they had what's called a Likert scale, where somebody would rate their response between very likely to very unlikely? What was the kind of results, what kind of data was generated? Do the writers discuss how the data might be used, why it's significant? Is there discussion about how the data might be applied? Do the writers explain how or why the data should or should not be applied in some context? They might do research, survey research about people's reactions to a particular phenomena, and they might say that those results were only relevant to one particular context. Do they talk about that much in their research? Presentation of results. Are the results presented in a separate section of the essay? So like the results are kept separate from methods and all that. That kind of gets to some of the structure issues I talked about earlier. Are the results displayed in a graphic or a table, in a text or paragraph format? That article that we took a look at earlier, they had a lot of different tables and graphs. You might want to ask, why did they represent the data in that way? They could have written it out in a paragraph, but they probably had good reasons for representing the data in a graphic form. How were the results discussed? Are the researchers surprised? Are the results discussed in terms of other projects that have been conducted? Talking about projects that have been similar in the past, and they say, well, this was new information that we found compared to this particular project. Do they mention that when they start talking about the results? Do they talk about the other studies that have been done on that issue? Graphic and visual design. What's the overall look of the article? Is it very, very text heavy with absolutely no graphics? No kind of, like all the text looks the same? Or is it broken up? And there's ways that people break up text all the time. If you're used to looking at articles on the web, you know that people use headers and subheaders to separate information. So I'll just give you a quick example with that article we were looking at. This is a lot of text. It's really dense to read, but it's actually not as bad as it could be, because just imagine what would happen if like these little headers went away. It'd be really tough to follow where the information is. It'd be really difficult to skim it quickly to understand, okay, I don't know exactly what this means, but I might be able to figure it out if I read just a little bit, but I know that this information is going to be very different. The information like here, senior managers. So these subheadings are really helpful. What they do is they kind of set information off from other parts of the article. So you have this large space here at the end of this section before we have this other section in this bold and italicized header. It creates enough contrast that we know that we have something completely different that's coming up. Some articles use this, some articles don't. It can be really helpful to include this, but I've read plenty of articles myself where none of this is included, and it makes for some pretty boring reading. And I know that this is not a barn burner or something you're really excited to read. Maybe you are. I'm assuming you're not. But this stuff is really helpful to readers. especially busy readers, researchers that are, or grad students or upper level students that are trying to quickly assess where the information is and then keying in on important information that they want to read more about. So, kind of putting things together. Remember to think about the important similarities and differences. Consider other ways to compare the articles. I've given you 5 or 6 to think about. There are probably others out there, and I'm interested to see what y'all come up with. Think about what you'll need to write. Look for ways to develop similarities and differences into paragraphs that you can write about. You take a look at 2 or 3 articles and you notice that they're all using similar methods. That's kind of interesting. What are some small ways that they differ from each other? I could see that being a paragraph, a really solid paragraph in your essay. Also taking a look at graphics or document design. How are they doing that in the articles that you're taking a look at? What's the effect of that? I think that's important stuff to think about. Look for specific examples to explain the similarities and differences. If you've had me for English 1101, you know that there's a difference between telling me something and showing me something. Telling me says that the articles are different because one uses subject headings and the other one doesn't. It takes a lot more to show me that, and you give me examples like they use this specific heading, which was really helpful because it set that information off from the previous section, and you get into and you use a little bit of detail to explain those similarities and differences. I think that's going to be key for this upcoming essay. Like I said, don't get caught up in the content of the articles. These articles are going to be pretty dense. I'd say skim them enough to know basically what they're trying to get at. Definitely read the abstract. That's that summary that's at the beginning of an article. Read that in a fair bit of depth and understand that pretty well. But don't get caught up in the content of the article. All right. The screencast has been pretty long. I apologize for that. But I'm looking forward to seeing where your essays go, and I'll be taking a look at drafts later this week. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me.